This announcement gives them hope. Give them a path forward. Say to them that yes, you can come to Canada. It is a beacon of hope.
A call for funding delivered. The feds come through with money to house asylum seekers in Toronto.
Tonight, will it close a chapter in a battle over the city budget? Good evening. For weeks, city and federal politicians have been at odds over who should pay the millions required to house refugees looking for a place to stay. At one point, Toronto taxpayers were faced with the prospect of footing the bill. CTV's Janice Goulding is live at City Hall with the story. Janice.
Hi, Michelle. Yes, Toronto taxpayers can breathe a sigh of relief given an extra 6% levy on their tax bills is officially off the table. Huge acclaim for a huge funding boost for asylum seekers announced at Costi Immigrant Services this morning.
Together, the investments we're announcing today represent over $162 million in additional support for the City of Toronto.
Toronto to receive a big chunk of the $362 million interim housing assistance program funding that was announced earlier this week.
They have fully delivered on what we asked for to help us support the thousands of refugees in Toronto shelter system.
Last month, the city threatened homeowners with an extra 6% levy on their tax bills if the federal government didn't come up with $250 million to cover costs for housing refugees and asylum claimants.
We told them we can't do this when the system was overwhelmed with 3,600 people on May 31st. It's now 5,800, and it is growing every week.
A threat that Etobicoke Centre MP Yvonne Baker called outrageous.
To me, that feels a little bit like a shakedown.
Today, the MP wouldn't directly address what he said last month, instead reiterating repeatedly.
I think the focus of today is really on what is a really important announcement that's going to help make sure the city has the funding it needs for shelter for asylum seekers.
Meanwhile, the city's budget committee chief heralded the new funding as a huge win.
The fact that we've gone from going to have to do massive service cuts to now we have a real partnership and we can give these people a good start should be rejoicing time.
Here's the breakdown. Toronto will receive $143 million through the interim housing assistance program to reimburse costs incurred sheltering asylum claimants in 2023 and the first quarter of 2024. It will also receive a nearly $20 million top-up to the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit, which helps people cover the cost of rent.
And it is in addition to the $97 million top-up our government announced to the IHAP program for the City of Toronto last July.
What the funding will mean is the mayor will be sticking to her proposed 9.5% property tax hike.
Just to be clear, there's no extra dollar here. It is still less than $1 a day, okay, in terms of property tax.
Still a record high property tax hike, just not as high as the 16.5% Torontonians were once threatened with. The mayor says refugees and asylum seekers currently account for more than half of the people in Toronto shelters. Reporting live, I'm Janice Goulding. Now back to Nathan.
All right, thank you, Janice. A pedestrian was rushed to hospital this morning after they were hit by at least one car in North York. It happened just before 11 near Yonge and Lawrence. Toronto police say 2 vehicles were involved in a collision. One could be seen on the side of the road with damage to its windshield. Toronto EMS transported an adult to a trauma center with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. There's been no word on any potential charges.
To Queen's Park tonight, an illegal victory for Doug Ford and his progressive conservative government.
The Supreme Court has sided with the Premier, ruling secret letters written to his cabinet will not be made public. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us live with more insight on what this decision means. Siobhan.
Well, Nathan, it means Ontarians won't get to see what Premier Doug Ford is telling his ministers is on their to-do list, not now and likely not down the road either. We did talk to one political analyst who says that these letters don't have much substance anyway, but the NDP says this is bad for transparency.
I will speak my mind.
Since 2018, the Premier's been in court fighting to keep his marching orders to cabinet private. Directions come through mandate letters. The country's highest court has sided with the government, ruling those letters are exempt from freedom of information laws. In a unanimous decision, the court says cabinet privilege prevails.
The letters are revealing of the substance of cabinet deliberations.
Cabinet privilege is an important concept. To be able to have a frank discussion, to have arguments, to have disagreements among cabinets so that you fire test different points of view.
The call to release a mandate letter or not is purely political.
Get to work. Here's a list of things I'd like to have you do before the end of the mandate. They're actually not that scintillating.
Sharing mandate letters is a fairly recent convention. Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne was first to do it in 2014. A year later, Justin Trudeau followed suit. Liberal and New Democratic premiers in BC, Manitoba, Newfoundland, and Yukon lay out their instructions to cabinet ministers online.
This is not a win for the people of Ontario.
The province's opposition leader says what's most disappointing is the time and money.
Hundreds of thousands of tax dollars that have been wasted by this government trying to prevent Ontarians from knowing what their priorities are and what his direction to his ministers was.
Earlier this week, the finance minister insisted the government has been transparent about its plans, campaigning on a budget introduced just before the 2022 vote.
A 241-page document to say to the people, if you elect us, this is what we will deliver.
But critically,
they promised Ontarians they weren't going to carve up the green belt, and they turned around and did exactly that.
It's why Reid says choosing not to release mandate letters isn't a good look.
It comes in the context of the Greenbelt investigations, of suggestions that people are paying money to get certain kinds of results, that the privileged and the insiders can get what they want out of cabinet.
And when things are kept secret, suspicion can flourish.
The government hasn't shared any reaction to today's news. Our emails, calls, and texts to the Premier's office have been ignored. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
Thanks, Siobhan. Also, tonight, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman is in town for the NHL All-Star Weekend, and he brought with him a big announcement, the return of NHL players to the Winter Olympics.
But first, let's take a live look outside on this Groundhog Day evening. Clear but cool conditions tonight, but people more interested today in what furry forecasters predict will happen in the weeks ahead.
So once again, the crier's bell did ring. Yes, Willie predicts, I repeat, it's an early spring!
In Ontario's Bruce Peninsula, Wyerton Willie delivered the goods. He did not see his shadow, indicating an early spring is just around the corner.
Groundhogs are the only mammal that truly hibernates in Nova Scotia. Bears go into sort of a semi-hibernation. Oh, here she is. Yay!
And the same prediction was made in Nova Scotia, where Shubenacadie Sam was the first of North America's celebrity rodents to not see his shadow today.
Glad tidings on this Groundhog Day! An early spring is on the way!
And in Pennsylvania, Puxatawny Phil agreed with his fellow groundhogs north of the border. Just after sunrise, the prediction came in. There will not be 6 more weeks of winter.
And Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. Jess, this is the day when rodents have as much clout as any weather person.
They wish they could. They wish they could. But they're not entirely wrong, right? We've already been experiencing very spring-like temperatures and really spring-like conditions, and this trend continues with more sunshine as we step in towards the weekend, thanks to high pressure really settling in and clearing things out. Temperature-wise, we're still kind of hovering just above the freezing mark in a good portion of southern Ontario. In and around the GTA, we're hovering kind of just above freezing, but it feels closer to -2 or -3. Through the islands right now, through Pearson, we're hovering at or just above freezing. It feels a little cooler, that northerly flow adding that bite to the air. Tonight dropping down to -4, staying well above seasonal, even when you factor in the wind chill. But coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including the weekend and the sunshine that is on the way. Nathan.
All right, thank you, Jess. Hydro One says a raccoon was to blame for a widespread power outage that impacted thousands across downtown and midtown Toronto last night. The lights went off in several neighborhoods a bit after 7:30. When officials say the animal made contact with electrical equipment. Service was restored by around 10:30.
And Toronto will launch its first pothole blitz of 2024 tomorrow. Road maintenance crews will work a 12-hour shift to fill as many potholes as possible, including 311 requests. The city says more than 22,000 have already been dealt with since January 1st, more than the same period over the last 3 years.
Sports fans will likely have more than they can stick handle this weekend.
The NHL All-Star Game takes over Scotiabank Arena tomorrow night. Excitement is building, including a big announcement from the league this afternoon. CTV's Mike Walker joins us live with all the details. Mike.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, Nathan. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman announcing this afternoon that NHL players will return to the Winter Olympics starting in 2026, and it's just adding to the excitement here at the All-Star Fanfare.
We have an agreement.
NHL players will once again compete in the Winter Olympics during the 2026 and 2030 games.
We know how important international competition is to our players. We know how much they love and want to represent the countries from which they're from.
NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman making the announcement during the All-Star festivities after the NHL reached an agreement with the Players Association and International Ice Hockey Federation. NHL players last competed in the Winter Games in 2014.
NHL players are the best in the world, and it's exciting to know that they'll be back on a world stage representing their countries in a best-on-best tournament.
Hockey fans say the return to the Olympics is long overdue.
Because that's the actual best on best.
It's great to have all of our star skilled boys and love to have a great high quality of play.
On day 2 of the fanfare, some lucky fans participating in a question and answer session with Toronto's Austin Matthews and William Nylander. Both will be competing in tonight's revamped skills competition that includes a $1 million prize.
Hopefully it'll be a good show for the fans and really showcase how skilled a lot of these guys are.
I think players will be chasing the prize more, so they'll want to compete harder.
I think it'll give it some more excitement, some more worth behind it.
This morning, about 500 students from across the GTA had exclusive access to the fanfare where they learned about science, technology, engineering, and math.
This is what the world needs. We need problem solvers. We need people that understand how things relate to each other, how things work with each other.
Former NHLer and Stanley Cup champion Andrew Ferentz taught the students how STEM is applied in hockey.
I learned how to use forces and angles in your shot and passes in hockey and how math makes hockey more fun.
Maybe they teach you more in class, but I think I learn more here because it's more fun. I pay more attention here.
The NHL says nearly 4 million students have benefited from this initiative since it was launched in 2014. The NHL also announcing a new international tournament for next year. It will include Canada, the United States, Sweden, and Finland. It will be held in a Canadian city and a U.S. city yet to be determined. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Back to you.
Thank you, Mike. An All-Star weekend is happening as 4 NHL players are set to appear in court Monday on sexual assault charges. Today, Commissioner Bettman insisted the case is not a reflection of the league or its players.
What happened, and I'll repeat the words, are abhorrent, disgusting, whatever you want to call it in terms of the allegations that have been made. This is not typical of NHL players. These players weren't NHL players in the league playing games at the time this alleged incident took place. And we are committed, and we do this through programs that we administer for our players, whether it's the rookie orientation program or the annual programs for education and counseling that we put on for our players. This is not representative, these allegations, of what takes place in our game.
5 former members of Canada's 2018 World Junior team are accused in an alleged sexual assault in London. Their lawyers say they will fight the allegations. Bettman says the NHL has completed a 12-month investigation of its own, but will not share the findings while judicial proceedings are underway.
An update on a story from last night. 2 teenage boys have been charged after police say they stole a car with 2 young children inside. Investigators say a mother was loading groceries into her vehicle near Lawrence and Weston yesterday afternoon with a 5-year-old and a baby in the back seat. A 13-year-old boy is accused of jumping behind the wheel and picking up a 16-year-old suspect before driving away. Officers caught up with the car and the younger children were found safe. The teenagers were arrested and now face a slew of theft and abduction charges.
And several months after a North York homicide, police have now taken a second suspect into custody. On Sunday, September 24th, not far from Finch subway station, police say a man was fatally stabbed. He was later identified as 23-year-old Joyous Magdarilla of Toronto. Days later, police arrested a youth on a charge of second-degree murder. And yesterday, they arrested 21-year-old Victor Bueron of Toronto on that same charge.
Meanwhile, police share these images of suspects and vehicles in a multi-day break and enter at an electrical station. Police say on January 13th and 14th, 8 men got access to the facility near Lakeshore and Reese Street and used 4 different vehicles to steal items from inside. That included approximately $300,000 worth of industrial copper cable. Investigators are asking anyone with footage of the area or incident to get in touch. Navigating Canada's road to zero emission. If you're buying a new vehicle, EVs will be your only option after 2035. But can supply keep up with demand? And are we on course? That's coming up.
A warning, this next story has some images some may consider disturbing. Calling the violence unacceptable, the Prime Minister is considering sanctions against some Israeli settlers in the West Bank. CTV's Kevin Gallagher reports.
It's all sort of everyone.
At a housing announcement, the Prime Minister issued a warning to Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank.
We are looking into how to make sure that those responsible for extremist violence or extremist settler violence in the West Bank are held to account for it. We are looking at sanctions on extremist settlers.
U.S. President Joe Biden issued an executive order yesterday barring 4 Israeli settlers access to America's financial system and froze their bank accounts after they were accused of intimidation and violence against Palestinians, something that often has deadly results. Palestinian Fatih Abu Ammar says settlers are killing our children before our eyes. We cannot do a thing. Violence in the West Bank was already at a 15-year high and has only intensified since the Hamas October 7th attack on Israel. This mayor of a West Bank settlement urged other countries to stay out of Israeli affairs.
It is surprising that the president decided to finger point at the small extreme group of Jews who are acting violently, who are treated by the Israeli law enforcement, and ignoring Palestinian violence, who's been killing thousands of Jews.
Palestinians hope the West Bank will become a future state, with some 500,000 Jewish settlers now living there in violation of international law, as well as 200,000 in East Jerusalem. Far-right Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has encouraged settlers to carry guns and recently advocated for expanding these Jewish communities into Gaza. Both Canada and the U.S. say expanding Israeli settlements will only hurt any future peace negotiation. Kevin Gallagher, CTV News, Ottawa.
The United Nations says 30% of buildings in the Gaza Strip have been damaged or destroyed since the Israeli offensive began. The UN reports more than 69,000 structures are affected and says the regions of Gaza City and Khan Yunis experienced the most significant increase in damage. The assessment follows analysis of satellite imagery. Health officials in the territory say more than 27,000 people have died since the war started. It began after Hamas killed about 1,200 people in an attack in Israel.
The United States has begun retaliatory strikes following the deaths of 3 American service members on the weekend. Today's attacks targeted facilities in Iraq and Syria, affiliated with groups that carried out Sunday's deadly strike in Jordan. The U.S. military action is believed to be just the first in a multi-tiered response. President Joe Biden directed the strikes, saying they will continue at times and places of our choosing.
The 3 U.S. service members killed in Jordan are back home tonight. A solemn repatriation ceremony was held at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. The Army Reserve soldiers died when Iranian-backed militants launched a drone attack against an American outpost. Today, Biden and the First Lady paid tribute as they joined the families of the fallen. About 40 other U.S. service personnel were injured in the attack.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister is on a 2-day visit to Kyiv. Melanie Jolie's there to seek global help in bringing home Ukrainian children taken to Russia.
Another reality of the war is the tragic and illegal transfer of thousands of Ukrainian children from Ukraine to Russia, away from their families, their homes, and their language. The importance of bringing back these children home cannot be understated. It is a matter of our own humanity.
Jolie is working with Ukraine on the initiative. She also urged allies to stay the course in their support of the Ukrainians. Canada has committed $9.7 billion through military development and emigration programs.
In The Hague, the UN's top court has decided it does have jurisdiction to rule on a request by Ukraine.
It is important that the court will decide on the issue that Ukraine is not responsible for some mythical genocide which the Russian Federation falsely alleged that Ukraine has been committing since 2014 in Donbass.
Kyiv has filed a case alleging Moscow used fake claims of genocide to justify its invasion nearly 2 years ago. Today's ruling occurred during the preliminary phase of the case.
It's a fine line, the public's right to know versus national security. That's the focus right now at the inquiry into foreign interference.
It's a balance, and it's not a binary choice. I think the government has to do both, has to maximize in the area of foreign interference in democratic processes. You want to have as much as possible an informed citizenry, a resilient electorate.
The public safety minister told the commission it will have full access to secret documents, even if some of the information can't be made public. Federal lawyers have said the release of detailed intelligence about alleged meddling by China and others would risk exposing vital secrets.
Now to the effort to chart Canada's course to zero emissions.
The federal government wants all vehicle purchases to be electric by the year 2035. It's an ambitious destination. And as CTV's Scott Lightfoot reports, it will require technological advancements to get there.
The goal is clear. Canada is mandating all new light-duty vehicle purchases to be zero-emission vehicles by the year 2035.
In Canada, we sell around 1.4 to 1.6 million light-duty vehicles a year. We're only selling, they're only being delivered about 150 to 200,000, let's say, a year. Last year was about 200,000. So again, we're at a shortfall there.
But many are questioning whether or not there will be enough of those vehicles to meet the anticipated need.
I figured we probably will have enough for about 55 or 60% of the total demand for light vehicles in Canada in the year 2035.
Brian Livingston recently published a report in which he undertook what he calls a risk-based assessment of automakers' future plans. But those plans appear to be changing almost by the day. Already this year, Ford has announced it will reduce production of the F-150 Lightning pickup truck, citing lower than expected demand for EVs. Volvo has announced it will cut off production for its EV affiliate Polestar, and General Motors has decided it will step back from its all-electric future strategy and instead put more focus on plug-in hybrids.
If your absolute priority is to say we want to move this EV transition along, well, you can open the market up to Chinese vehicles coming in that will absolutely be able to sell at a lower price point today, but be careful what the consequences of that are and the risks for your own domestic auto industry.
Some suggest focusing on plug-in hybrid vehicles might act as the training wheels Canadians need as they get used to the idea of zero-emission vehicles and as the technology behind those vehicles improves.
If, as and when, the range anxiety disappears, instead of 300 or 400, you have 600 kilometers for a battery vehicle. When the charging infrastructure issue disappears, where you can go into any gas station now, and there's a charging unit over there in the corner, right next to the Tim Hortons in the convenience store, you'll go there, and that'll be very convenient. And lastly, it's not going to take you 30 minutes anymore to charge your battery vehicle.
From charging speeds to vehicle designs to the batteries themselves, there are expected to be major advances in technology before the 2035 deadline.
What you often hear talked about as a bit of a holy grail on the battery front is a solid-state battery. So, when we get to solid-state batteries, they're going to be lighter, they're going to charge much faster, they're going to have a longer useful life, all the rest of it.
Getting to zero emission may be the destination, but the road to get there and the estimated time of arrival may not be as clear as the government hopes.
To get it all done by 2035, I don't think is realistic. Some people just won't buy them, and people may be more likely to buy plug-in hybrids, but it'll take time for them to get used to it. I mean, we're all creatures of habit. It takes us a while to get used to some new technology, but eventually we will.
Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
Coming up, confronting challenges with dementia among the LGBTQ2S+ community, examining the unique needs in care and the impact of trauma and discrimination.
It's an all-star forecast for an all-star weekend. Temperature-wise, we are staying above seasonal, holding on to the sunshine, and a beautiful weekend from start to finish to spend some time outdoors or to go check out all of the action taking place this weekend. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, and stay with us. We've got another great night of shows for you right here on CTV.
Finding the right care for loved ones with dementia can be difficult.
But a new study looks at the unique additional challenges faced by the LGBTQ2S plus community. CTV Health reporter Pauline Chan has the details.
James Dubrow and John Lydolt have been together for 40 years, but while John can often remember events from decades ago, recent memories are fleeting.
I like him to keep going down to get coffee and things to make him feel useful, but sometimes he forgets why he's going down.
John has been struggling with dementia for 9 years.
We did some intense research last year, very comprehensive.
EGAL Canada has been studying the way dementia and Alzheimer's are experienced by the LGBTQ2S plus community.
We know because of discrimination and because of cultural trauma that members of the 2S LGBTQI community are 2 to 3 times at greater risk of cognitive impairment and dementia than the broader population.
James says the long history of discrimination against the gay community goes back to the days of AIDS and beyond, and some of that stigma lingers. Even documentation, essential in healthcare settings, can be a problem.
So we have trans people, for example, whose identities are not being recognized by healthcare providers, whose care is being refused and they're being denied care.
And how society sees you can create difficulties in getting the kind of health care you need.
Because, and think of it, if you're trans and have gender issues and then you have memory issues, well, you might not remember what your identity is. And that's pretty frightening. That goes right to the core of your being.
He'd like to see the development of a few private care settings that would be sensitive to this community's needs.
I think you have to think of this as one of many vulnerable communities.
He points to Indigenous and Asian groups as other vulnerable communities, and as the population of dementia patients grows in the coming years, each will need more focused care. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
The TTC is promising to ramp up service this weekend as thousands of hockey fans stream into downtown Toronto. Officials say more trains will run on Line 1 and more streetcars will operate on downtown routes to get riders to Scotiabank Arena and the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. There's one closure to bear in mind. Line 2 trains won't run between Warden and Kennedy as track work takes place. Shuttle buses will be available. Yes, it's a huge weekend in the city, and wow, the weather is going to cooperate. Today felt glorious. The bright sunshine, it wasn't too cold. I was loving it.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Wearing sunglasses for the first time in seemingly weeks. Right? It just felt great. It was just a whole different vibe.
Never felt so popular in my whole life. Everyone's like, the sunshine. I'm like, you're welcome. I didn't have any actual control over it, but it is so nice. I saw someone in shorts this morning. That's a bit much for me, but to each their own. A beautiful start to the weekend. It has been such a dark few weeks, really, as we rounded out the month of January, but we step into February in a fantastic way with sunshine. Weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train. And you know, like Nathan and Moshe was saying, we had to bust out those sunglasses this morning for that morning drive. It was a little bit bright out there, and I think a lot of folks not quite used to seeing that because it's been such a long time since we've had a sunny drive into work, school, and to our daily adventures. Temperature-wise right now, we're still sitting at 0. It feels like -5. That cool northerly wind adding just a little bit of a bite to the air, but overall, it is manageable. A little cooler the further north you go, but even Peawanuck has warmed up a little bit. They're at -4. As we head into the evening, seasonal averages around -10. You factor in the wind chill, and we're still nowhere close to that. We'll be at -4. It'll feel like -10. Those minus double-digit wind chills are really anywhere east of us. So Peterborough through to Kingston, Aurelia to Bancroft. They're kind of still dealing with that little bit of a deep freeze. As we head in towards the beginning of our weekend, sunshine and positive temperatures. It's a much more, reminiscent of a spring forecast than it is of a winter forecast, but I promise you we are still in the thick of winter. Not a lot in the way of any kind of active weather. High pressure really settles in, and it's not going anywhere as we head over the next 5 to 7 days. We are holding on to the sunshine as we head throughout the weekend. It is still above seasonal, but because we've seen that cloud cover lift, it's lifted some of that warmth that we've been kind of holding on to. But we are going to start off our day a little little cloudy tomorrow, but that clears out. Sunshine rolls in, and it's a beautiful weekend from start to finish. A little more high-level cloud cover as we head into Sunday, but overall, that kind of breaks up off and on throughout the day, and we'll see a decent amount of sunshine, a few more peaks here and there, but regardless, it is a significantly different forecast from what we've had over the past couple of weeks. Not a lot of typical wintry weather, but either way, it is still comfortable to spend some time outdoors. We're holding on to a bit of a ridge in the jet stream, holding on to just a little bit of warmth. We're not seeing those yellows and oranges where it's that real warm weather, but I call it warm adjacent. We're still warm enough as we head in towards the next couple of days. Temperature-wise, we should be at -2 for the high, -10 for the low. Nowhere near that as we head in towards the first kind of full week of February. Through your weekend, 4 for Saturday, 5 for Sunday. Even the overnight lows are quite comfortable at -3 apiece. Getting into Monday, the first full week of February, still a lot of sunshine. A little cooler at 2 degrees, but that's still, well above that seasonal norm of about -2.3. Then we get into the bulk of next week, again, quite comfortably. A little more cloud cover settles in as we head in through our Wednesday, in towards our Thursday. But honestly, by the time we get to the end of next week, we could be up to 7, maybe 9 degrees. We'll keep an eye on that. The long-range forecasts weren't all agreeing. But regardless, it is warm, it is sunny, and it's a fantastic way to welcome in the first full week of February. Nathan.
All right. Thank you, Jess.
Thanks.
Also tonight, he's been dubbed the Crypto King, a so-called boy genius accused of ripping off investors of more than $40 million. A preview of tomorrow night's W5 investigation coming up. This weekend on W5, a deep dive on an Ontario man who's been dubbed the Crypto King. Despite allegations of ripping off investors, Aiden Platursky continues to travel the world and live stream his lavish lifestyle. He's doing this even after an alleged kidnapping for ransom.
The story takes a wild and dark turn.
I'm Aiden Platursky. I'm the Forex trader that they're calling the Crypto King online.
An edited 12-minute video showing a beaten and swollen Platursky was posted anonymously on social media.
I should have been honest with everybody when I told them I had lost a lot of money. I lost close to $45 million. Strictly alone in the crypto market.
Tomorrow night, W5 reveals the Crypto King's eye-watering wealth and unravels the complicated investigation into how so many people believed he was a financial boy genius.
And W5's investigative correspondent and managing editor Avery Haynes joins us now with more details on tomorrow's report titled The Crypto Bros. Avery, how did Platursky manage to convince people to give them their money? And then where did all that money go?
Well, Aiden Platursky was developing this sort of persona as being a boy genius. Since he was 16 years old, he started trading when he was super young. We found a Forbes magazine article that looked like a news article, but it was actually paid advertisement touting this boy genius from Whitby, Ontario. And he lived this extraordinary life of Lamborghinis, McLarens, diamond-encrusted Rolexes, private jet travel, and people bought into his claim that he was going to be able to give them a staggering 10% return a week on their money. And it all came crashing down in August of 2022 when investors realized, wait a second, we're never getting the money that he said that we were going to get back. So far, $40 million has been reported as being lost. Only $2 million has been recovered. But we've spoken to people who believe the amount of money that was invested with Aiden Platursky is upwards of $100 million, but that many people who invested are the sort of nefarious folks who would not want to come forward and say, we handed him $1 million in cash.
Well, mind-boggling. And also, there were other accomplices in other communities. How far did this reach?
And this is what's never been reported before. We are drawing the line between Aiden Platursky as kind of the face of this. We have uncovered at least 2 feeder schemes. So sort of mini Aiden Platursky's operating in Chatham, Ontario, and in Oshawa. And they were collecting money in the same way that Aiden Platursky was, with wild promises of returns, and funneling some of the money to him.
And the bizarre turn with this story, we saw in that package earlier, the alleged kidnapping of Aiden Platursky. What was going on there?
It's just like a Netflix series, right? I mean, at every stage, this thing is some weird alternate universe where young kids with lots of money. This is a 12-minute edited video that was posted of him being tortured. We have spoken to people who know what happened during the 3-day kidnapping, who talk about waterboarding and other forms of torture and the extortion that he faced from angry investors, one of whom is among the 5 people who've been charged with the kidnapping.
And where does the investigation stand now?
And this is what is highly irritating for the people who've lost everything. This is now a year and a half in. We know, even though they are loath to admit this, we know that there is a massive police investigation, a massive Ontario Securities Commission investigation, and yet no charges have been laid criminally. Aiden Platursky is live streaming almost every night. He refused to do an interview with us, but we have been monitoring every one of those hours and hours of live streams where he talks to his fans while building Lego about being kidnapped, about the bankruptcy, and about how he's trading again and made $46,000 in one day trading.
Wow, it's unbelievable. And I know there's even more in your report. Avery, thanks for stopping by and telling us about this. And I know it'll be definitely one to watch. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys.
And we'll tell you, you can tune into Avery's full W5 report. It's called The Crypto Bros, and it airs right here on CTV tomorrow at 7. And an associate of Aiden Platursky was sentenced to 5 months in jail today in a related case. Multi-platform writer Hannah Alberga has the full details on the case on our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
He's being remembered as a phenomenal talent and a great person. Fans and colleagues are mourning the loss of Carl Weathers. The 76-year-old actor died peacefully in his sleep. Weathers is perhaps best known for playing Apollo Creed in the Rocky movies. But the former NFL linebacker also starred in Action Jackson, Predator, and Happy Gilmore, among other films. Weathers also appeared in a number of TV shows, most recently Arrested Development and The Mandalorian.
Canada will be a big presence at the Grammys this weekend, with a fair amount of hardware potentially coming to artists from this country.
The way you make me feel these days.
Drake is nominated in 4 categories for his 2022 collaboration with 21 Savage on Her Loss. This would mark a return to the Grammys for Drake, who has been boycotting the award show for the last few years.
Among the artists set to take the stage at Sunday's show will be Canadian music legend Joni Mitchell. She's already got 9 Grammy Awards to her name, but she's up for Best Folk Album for her live performance at the Newport Folk Festival alongside Brandi Carlile and other special guests. This will mark Joni Mitchell's first time ever performing at the Grammys.
I'm late, but I'm here right now.
And Billy Joel has released his first new solo song in several years, titled Turn the Lights Back On. The track is the singer-songwriter's first since 2007 and his only second since 1993. Fans may get a chance to hear a live rendition as soon as Sunday, as Joel is on the list of Grammy performers as well, although not nominated.
As Adele prepares for the end of her Las Vegas residency, her next performance series is already being extended because of demand.
Adele, live in Munich.
Earlier this week, the British songstress set concert dates in August in a special custom-built venue in Munich, Germany. Originally, only 4 shows were planned, but organizers doubled that figure to 8, citing phenomenal demand. Season 2 of The Last of Us is also filming in BC this year and has now signed a big-name guest star.
If you don't think there's hope for the world, why bother going on?
The critically acclaimed HBO series follows a pair of survivors in the wake of a zombie fungus outbreak. While best known for her comedic talents, Canada's own Catherine O'Hara will make an appearance in the second season in an undisclosed role. That second season of The Last of Us is expected to debut in 2025.
After the break, looking at pay equity with a transparent lens. The feds launch a new website that shines a light on where workforce pay gaps can be bridged and employee diversity improved.
The investments we're announcing today represent over $162 million.
Updating our top stories is not the full amount the city had asked for, but Ottawa's offering some new cash to cover the costs Toronto has faced housing and supporting asylum seekers. Mayor Olivia Chow says her proposed property tax hike will remain at a record 9.5%.
You should be excited to share that, unless there's something you're trying to hide.
That criticism from Ontario's NDP leader after a major court victory for the Ford government. Canada's Supreme Court ruled the Premier was not required to publicly release his mandate letters to ministers. The PCs say they share their plans in their election platform.
Hopefully it'll be a good show for the fans and really showcase how skilled a lot of these guys are.
And Toronto's the place to be tonight if you're a hockey fan, as NHL All-Star Weekend continues with the skills competition. Commissioner Gary Bettman also announced NHL players can once again compete in the Winter Olympic Games in 2026 and 2030. In business, there could be a new chapter in the story of Canadian book retailer Indigo. The company's biggest shareholders want to take the company private. B&M Bloomberg's Jacqueline Hansen has the details.
Indigo shares jumped nearly 50% today. Its biggest shareholders are doing some window shopping, looking to buy the rest of Indigo's shares that they don't already own and take the company private. The shareholders are a pair of companies controlled by Gerald Schwartz, who is an Indigo board member, and the husband of Indigo's CEO, Heather Reisman. He already owns a majority of the shares, but now is proposing to buy up the rest for $2.25 a share, about 50% more than the company was valued at on Thursday. Indigo has faced some big challenges over the past year, including a cyber attack that cost it millions. Reisman, who founded the company, also stepped back from Indigo, but she returned last fall as CEO, saying the brand had lost its way. Let's take a look at some of the closing market numbers for today. The Canadian dollar is trading lower at 74.31 cents US. West Texas Intermediate oil slid $1.50 to about $72 US a barrel. As for stock markets, the TSX declined 34 points to end the trading week at 21,085.09. That is the latest in business. I'm Jacqueline Hansen of B&M Bloomberg.
Ottawa says a new website on pay transparency will help close gaps in both compensation and representation. The site is called Equivision, and it has data on federally regulated employers with 100 or more staff. The tool includes figures on women, Indigenous people, people with disabilities, and visible minorities, and lets users compare data on workforce representation and pay gaps. The site does not include information on individual employees.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
To the world of sports, the Toronto Raptors are in Houston tonight, where they will face an old friend.
Scotty B. Finds Thad Young. Shot it from the hip. And Thad Young collects and delivers.
The Raptors are coming off a 118-107 win in Chicago, but they have lost 8 of their last 10 games. This evening, they'll have to contend with the Rockets and their new point guard, Fred VanVleet.
And the Blue Jays' newest member spoke to reporters for the first time, displaying some of the experience he hopes to bring to the team.
Lining it up and getting guys to buy into, hey, if you want to win a World Series, like, we're going to have to, swallow some pride and just do whatever it takes, whether that's the sexy role or not. I promise you won't care about it when you're, holding that trophy at the end of the day.
Toronto's offense had a bit of a down year in 2023, but Justin Turner says there's a lot of talent there. The two-time All-Star signed a 1-year, $13 million deal.
Meanwhile, a Canadian athlete has reached the pinnacle of his sport. Mikael Kingsbury is now the most successful skier in the history of the International Ski Federation. He captured his 87th World Cup victory in the individual moguls event yesterday. That makes Kingsbury the most decorated skier in the Olympic disciplines of the World Cup. The 31-year-old from Quebec also extended his lead in the overall mogul standings.
A company in Ohio is busy making the footballs for next weekend's Super Bowl. Both the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers will get 108 balls each. But the Wilson Football Factory is not stopping there. It will continue to make special replica balls for commercial use. The Super Bowl kicks off Sunday, February 11th in Las Vegas.
Still ahead tonight, the professionals take over the ice at Nathan Phillips Square. A thrill for fans and just a taste of hockey taking over the city this weekend.
If this is bankruptcy, where do I sign up?
flaunting eye-watering wealth,
I don't know how he's making the money.
leaving investors broke.
Fraud alters people's lives.
W5 exposes
You could face jail time today.
a web of fast money,
The yachts and the boats and the cars.
victims and insiders
These people have lost life savings.
demanding justice. An all-new W5 with Avery Haynes, Saturday at 7 on CTV.
The Zamboni is busy cleaning the ice tonight at Nathan Phillips Square.
Quite a different scene from this afternoon when the pros took over the rink. Members of Toronto's professional women's hockey team held an open team practice in the square this afternoon. It included a 3-on-3 showcase featuring players Renata Fast, Jocelyn Larocque, Sarah Nurse, and Blair Turnbull. Toronto will take on Minnesota at noon tomorrow at the Mattamy Athletic Center.
Oh, that must have been so enjoyable today under a bright sunny sky, and there's more to come, Jess.
It makes such a difference, right, when you're spending time outside and we get more sunshine as we head into the weekend, even nicer temperatures. It really does feel more like a spring kind of weekend ahead of us than a winter one, but I assure you it is. As we make our way throughout the rest of the weekend, it will be quite nice, and even into this evening, quite comfortable. We're still hovering around 0, feeling like -5, but around home tomorrow, whether you're staying home, you're going out to watch any of the All-Star action, it's going to be super nice. Heading in towards the end of the weekend, maybe a few clouds out there, but still sitting at 5 degrees and looking ahead to the first full week. It is a slow but steady climb from 2 degrees up to 7 by the time we head in towards the end of next week. So something to look forward to. If you've been missing the sunshine, we have it back in abundance in the forecast. And a reminder about the new Lotto 649 with 2 big jackpots to be won on 1 ticket. Saturday's classic jackpot is $5 million. And the new global jackpot is $40 million. You can head to olg.ca for more information.
Thank you, Jess. That's it for us, but be sure to join Heather Butts tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Raheem Ladani with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and all of us here at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a great weekend.